Okay, we're gonna pass around the sign-in sheet. I'm sorry I'm so unprepared. It's a real Monday. We have a lot happening in the building, a lot of things changing. Some of you have probably heard about it. Some of you may have been involved in the programming for that, and some of you may be in the dark. So I wanted to get everybody on the same page. So if you receive this YouTube link and you already heard this message, please watch again, because the more times you hear it, the better, right? Did somebody, Katie, did you send the connection sheet out that I sent you last week? Okay. So families are receiving or did receive an update if they're in our email news chat. And those that don't have our email chat did receive phone calls from Kylie explaining what we will be doing and how our visits are changing. So we are opening up to allowing visitors into residence rooms. We will be escorting them to that room. If they have a roommate, we will be either finding an alternative location for that visit to happen, or removing the roommate during that visit time to a ideal space for them to enjoy their time while they're outside of their room. This has to be scheduled, and the reason that we still have to schedule these visits is because we have to practice good infection control. Okay, so what oftentimes people don't understand about opening back up is, yes, they're saying, if your vaccination rate is good and your county positivity rate is low, open the doors. But we're also regulated by the Department of Inspection and Appeals to follow infection control practices such as screening visitors. We have to be able to screen a visitor. So if we were just to unlock the door and say, come on in anytime you want, how many people do you think would properly be screened into the building? I mean, I would miss them. I wouldn't know if they'd already been screened in by somebody else, right? How would we know? How would we follow that procedure so that we could avoid getting ourselves into any sort of trouble with DIA? How would we avoid spreading any potential infections? What if somebody was running a temperature and they tried to come in and they didn't really know? They didn't feel great, but they didn't really know. And until we held them accountable by asking those questions, they didn't think about it. But then they came in and maybe say they gave their loved one, a virus. That would be unfortunate, right? Okay, so we will continue to screen our visitors. Kylie has developed a great system. We're going to continue to utilize the phone line that we have at the NF side. The AL will be the direct phone line. You can call to schedule the visits. When a person is appointed handling visits, so like today Katie's handling the visits, she will meet them at the door. She will screen them. She will escort them to the room. She will explain what the rules are, that we're not leaving, we're not wandering around, we're not doing those things, offer hand hygiene. She will also get them a call light. So they will either utilize the call light in the room, or they will be given a pendant if they're not in the residence room. When the call light goes off, anybody in the building, myself, Steph, Lisa, Tanya, Kylie, anyone who sees that call light go off can escort that visitor out of the building. Okay? Any questions about that? Whose responsibility is it to escort a visitor out of the building?
Everybody.
Okay, so should any one of us that identify that a call light's going off to escort a visitor out, call and ask somebody to do it for them?
No.
Unless, you might be in the thick of something, and then, yeah, let's be a team and help each other out, right? Okay, that's visits. That is, yes.
How long are these visits?
They are as long as they need to be. So if a loved one wants to stay with the resident for 2 hours, let them stay for 2 hours. But if that happens to fall during a mealtime, we need to educate that resident that, you won't be able to go out into the dining room with your loved one. A lot of times that's going to change the dynamic, and a lot of times family doesn't want to interfere with their social engagements. So provide that education, share with them what's going on. If they want to go to an activity, know that they can't bring their loved one out to that activity, because we're still trying to reduce the risk of exposure. Does that make sense? Okay. Second part of our changes, which I feel like we've talked about, but I think it's very confusing. So please, if it's not as clear as possible to you, ask the question now or come see me right afterwards so that I can clarify, because this is very important. If a resident is going out for a non-scheduled appointment, that could be Easter dinner, that could be a chiropractor appointment that a loved one created for them, just spur of the moment. That could be a drive, that could be an overnight stay. We cannot tell our residents here or their families that they cannot leave. That is not our place. Our residents and tenants deserve the dignity of living a long, healthy, amazing life where they did all of their adult things just fine. They came here to live because they needed additional care, not for us to tell them what they can and cannot do. They have rights. If they choose to leave, there is a process. We have created this non-medically necessary appointment and outing P&G. Where can you find this? You can find it out here. It is stapled to this folder on the front desk. Any resident leaving the building for a non-medically necessary appointment will need to have this, follow this procedure. There's tons of forms here. On the front part of the page, it's just the risks. So it's educating the resident or the family member who's taking that individual out on the potential risks of exposure. We're still seeing positive cases of COVID. We want to make sure that everybody is informed of the potential risk that they may have. We're not saying don't do it, we're just sharing the information of the risk. That portion's completed when the resident leaves. This is anybody taking, this is Darcy, if you take me in the wheelchair up to the front so that my loved one can take me out, you complete this. Sarah, same thing. If you take them up, you're completing this first portion, okay? Now, when the resident returns, there's an assessment. This is determining whether or not we choose to isolate the resident, okay? So what I need you guys to do from this aspect is, okay, Anna, say you get called down to get a resident who is coming back from an appointment out. This should be in the bin at the front door until they come back. You're gonna pull out the resident you're coming to get out of here, you're gonna find it, you're gonna go through this assessment with them. It talks about where they've been, what, you know, how many people they were around, the county that they were at, and then we will use an interdisciplinary team approach. This does not have to be me making this decision. What I would like to see is, Anna, you take it to, say, Sarah. And between the two of you, you go through it and you see, is this a potential risk? Is this, I mean, did they say, oh yeah, it turns out my niece was with us and she's got COVID, but she felt okay. That's probably gonna be something we wanna isolate for. Were they with 3 other people and those 3 other people have been fully vaccinated? I think that's gonna be a completely different thing. Use an interdisciplinary team approach, but sign your names, that you guys talked about it and what's going on, and then it will go in the bin, in Katie's bin, for her to upload into their medical record, okay? So this, again, isn't me making this decision. This is you guys using your best judgment because you've heard the same information that I've been hearing the last year, right? You guys can make informed, educated decisions as well. I'm empowering you to do that. Now, let's say Tammy and Lisa get somebody back and you guys are practically arm wrestling over if you think they should isolate or not, right? Tammy says yes, Lisa says no, you guys just can't get around it. I would gladly be the tiebreaker. So if you can't get to a decision, please let me know. I will help. I want to help facilitate any of that. I'm not saying I won't, but I know that you guys can do this on your own. I know that you can problem solve through this. Now, if somebody comes back and they've been exposed or you feel that they're a risk, what would we do?
Isolate.
And we can always isolate for the 7 to 10 recommended CDC days and test. We could test at that point. If we felt like the individual showed no signs or symptoms and was not a risk, then we could remove them from isolation. We can remove isolation just like we can put them on, but that's the safest way to make sure that as we have more people coming in and also going out, that we don't spread something and not know it. Are there any questions about either one of these new processes? Okay, so if a family member calls and says, I'm coming to pick Crystal up, I would, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Whose responsibility is it to get this done?
Whoever brings them down.
So, Sarah, let's say you get a call on your resident today. They're gonna come take this person. So you're probably gonna have one of your aides get them ready to go, make sure they look good, they're dressed, they're ready to go. And then what's the plan? Then what would we do from there?
Bring them up front, have
cognitively unable to do that, make sure that the person taking them, that's signing them out of the building, is aware of the risk and completing that piece, that you're talking with them. Because if I'm confused, I'm not gonna say yes or no to going out. I'm not gonna know any better. I'm just gonna do what you tell me to do. And then, Deb, let's say you get the call when they're coming back in. What will you do when they come back in?
I'll grab that paper out of the bin and fill it out before they go back to the other one.
Perfect. Is there anyone who feels uncomfortable with this process, sees maybe a shortcoming that might not work well for us? Now's the time. I wish I could see your guys' mouths. I'm just guessing by eyes. Okay, well, these are new processes, so if we identify that there's barriers, that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just have to identify what the problem is, the barrier, and work together to develop interventions. That means you guys doing the work that are seeing the problems, we have to be forthcoming with them so that we can problem solve, okay? Awesome. Thanks, team. Have a great Monday.